3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a podcast for RTS. This has been a while, a little bit delayed. It's been, I don't know, a few months actually since our last podcast. Today, Blake's joining me. This hasn't happened before. And some regular guests. I'm sure you guys know these fellas if you're from the Company of Heroes community. We have Stormless, Helping Hans, and Tenchi.
What's up, bro?
Hello.
How are we all?
Hey,
Yeah, good,
Very
thanks.
So, we're going to be talking about Dawn of War 3 primarily. There was a big multiplayer reveal over the past few days. There was a couple of articles posted about it, giving some information. There was a lot of gameplay footage revealed by certain sites such as GameSpot, IGN. And they've taken a rather controversial direction. And we've kind of known that from the start in terms of their art style and just the way that it was presented. But now with the multiplayer reveal especially, a lot more so than single player, it's going to feature a lot of MOBA mechanics. And that's kind of pissed a lot of people off, including, I think, all of us here, apart from maybe Hans. So we're going to be giving our thoughts about this. And a lot of people have been asking about our thoughts for a while. And I feel like now we do kind of have a bit of information that we can give some thoughts. So, where do we start? Hans has actually played Dawn of War 3, the multiplayer that is. Stormless and I have played the single player. But I feel like before we actually start, we should probably give a couple of disclaimers. So, most of us here have a working relationship with Relic, or at least have done so in the past. Stormless and I, we did some casting for the Winter Balance preview. We did ESL casting. Hans is a streamer. So, we do have some kind of a relationship with them, really, apart from Tenchi.
Yeah, I just played the game, man. I'm just in it for the banter.
So Hans,
I would actually say like our relationship with Relic is still tight at the moment. You know what I mean? Still organizing tournaments closely with them. So, but we're more on the Company of Heroes side of Relic. The Dawn of War team we are in communication with, but not fully reciprocal communication.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Actually, it's quite disappointing because, like, you know, the community manager for Company of Heroes is fantastic, and with he's been great for the community and for the game overall. But I feel like there has been a bit of a disconnect from the DAO side of things, even though we have actually met the CM Kat, and she seemed cool. But I guess we're a little bit salty that we weren't included into the beta. But Hans was. So yeah, how about Hans? You give some thoughts on what you've played so far, and I think he's a bit more optimistic than the rest of us.
Well, I unfortunately got to play it a couple of weeks ago in a London press event, and also I've just been playing it for maybe an hour or so today. People keep telling me like they're worried about the MOBA aspect, but I honestly think that it's not too bad. People are looking at League of Legends and Dota and thinking, oh, it's just that lane system with the turrets and stuff. It isn't as bad as all that. It feels more like an annihilation mode where you've got to attack some key locations and then you can progress towards the main base. There isn't any victory point game mode like we're used to in Company Heroes 2. And that might annoy a lot of people. I think it's kind of silly that Relic have completely decided they're on release they're only going to give out the this MOBA style game mode. That's the only game mode at launch, and I'm really surprised they haven't done with the, haven't launched with like a victory point game mode. But yeah, I'm not too worried. It's just like you take out the shield generators, then you take out this turret, which is like, Company Heroes 2 base defenses, but OP. So that's in a nutshell, that's what that is. And then you've got to take out, like, instead of the HQ, you could take that out, but what you want to take out is their power core. So like in a MOBA, you have obviously that key point which destroyed you in the game. Same thing in Dawn of War 3. But, that would be kind of the same thing if you took out someone's HQ building in Co or something. If that's down, you can't win anyway.
I guess actually we should probably backtrack a little bit here and actually explain a bit more of what's been revealed. For those of you that haven't actively been following Dawn of War 3 and don't quite understand what we mean by the MOBA mechanics. So Blake, do you want to kind of explain what's been revealed and what's been discussed and what we know about DAO 3?
Yeah, so as you said earlier, several sites have come out with gameplay footage of the game, their explanations of it, and from the looks of things, it definitely isn't a VP orientated game mode. It is a game mode that involves, as Helping Hand said, an annihilation kind of a mode where you have, you know, two bases or nodes or kind of cores where you're bringing in units and spawning armies from. You kind of more running headlong into each other rather than looking towards kind of the open map flanking kind of arena that you see in games like Dawn of War and Dawn of War 2, Company of Heroes, that kind of a style. It is really more of a lane oriented map design where you are running your units into each other. So that's what we see so far. And
yeah.
in addition to that, sorry.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah.
I was going to segue you to that, yeah.
Yeah, go segue. Yeah,
oh,
go.
okay. Also, like, the elite units and stuff. Like...
Yeah. In the addition, the elite units as well. So, yeah, not only just the regular base building, you're also going to have elite units for each of the different factions that are going to be call-ins, and I'm sure Helping Hands can go into kind of how that works in terms of the resource system as well as the kind of loadouts, having not played it myself. But, yeah, you're going to have elite units. They're going to have, you know, abilities like you would have in games like League of Legends, where you have... obviously a champion that has numerous abilities, and they kind of use them for different purposes. You're going to have that same similar aspect in Dawn of War, where you've got your regular units, and from the sounds of things, will have regular abilities. So nades, things you're used to, movement speed abilities, things like that you're used to having in games like Dawn of War 1, Dawn of War 2, in addition to having these commander units which have their own special set of abilities that are, you know, particularly strong and specific to each of the different call-ins. So,
from what I've seen, obviously I haven't played multiplayer, but from what I've seen of gameplay footage, the way that the units and the elites work, it kind of feels a little bit analogous to creeps in a MOBA, and the elites are your hero that has the abilities. Would you say that kind of holds up, Hans?
Well, the creeps are the units that spawn in, right?
In MOBAs.
I don't play.
Yeah. Like in a MOBA, you have creeps that you don't control. They just kind of push the lanes, and then you, the hero, plays around that.
Yeah, we all had to take a little second there where we went, there's no creeps in Dawn of War.
We were like, really? I was kind of hoping that Imperial Guard would be creeps, and then like your Space Marines alongside them. That'd be cool.
Constantly.
That sounds like a cool idea, actually. But no, don't worry. The creeps don't exist in Dawn of War 3. It definitely feels like, you know, the Dawn of War 1 style kind of gameplay with all your units. You make your units out, you can pull them back, reinforce them at your base. There is no retreating, which is interesting. I'm not sure I like that, but we'll see how that goes. And the cover system is very simplified, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, so it definitely feels like Dawn of War 1. You build your units, and you try and support your army and your elite. You can imagine like your elite heroes as being like, they only have like really a maximum of like 3 abilities that I've seen so far. So it's not like you like in League of Legends where one hero has like a huge amount of abilities to use. It's like you got 3 elites, each with like maybe 3 abilities, but there's more to micro, because obviously you got 3 and you're not microing one unit like in a normal MOBA. And then you also have all the other units that you're building like from your production buildings and stuff. So yeah, there are no creeps in Dawn of War 3.
Can I ask you, Hans, because this is something that I picked up on, I played this in Vancouver last year.
The single player is what we played.
I saw, and we actually played the same one a couple of weeks ago at the PC Gamer event in London. They hadn't got the newer build out for that event. So one of the things that really struck me in single player is the base buildings, like the production buildings, had no hotkeys. Which meant you had to constantly pull back to base if you wanted to build anything. Do you know what I mean? There was no kind of like quick instant way to get there.
Like how you hit F1 in Company of Heroes.
Precisely. Those buttons were actually for heroes and elites in the single player mode.
Right.
So is that still the same in multiplayer?
To be honest, I haven't checked at the moment. I can check right now if you give me a minute or two.
I would look, because that was one of the things that I thought, if you're going to fuse RTS and kind of like take RTS into the MOBA realm, I think that's one of the really important features of RTS is your production. Like, you know, whether it's a macro focused game or just a game like Company of Heroes, where, you know, you just need to identify the base and pull a unit out quickly as you want it. The quickest way I was doing it during the single player demo was to actually try and click on the mini map, but the camera would like drag down. And I was like, I'm wasting so much time here not looking at the engagements. So my hope is that in the multiplayer, you know, that there is good, you know, there is at least RTS functionality in that respect.
Okay, I'm just quickly looking through the UI here. It doesn't appear to be anything, and bear in mind this is beta build, so it'll be very limited in what they're offering. But I don't see anything for customizing hotkeys, which is a big one.
I mean, Code 2
Really?
didn't have
Which is-
custom hotkeys. DAO 2 didn't have custom
yeah.
hotkeys. DAO, none of them have had custom hotkeys, which is quite frustrating.
That to me is just a huge turn off right off the bat.
Yeah, I
Like
agree.
because I'm left-handed.
Really?
Yeah, he is.
Wow.
He's
I didn't know you were a handicap. Do you have a
No,
wheelchair as
well-
well?
But you know, like most RTS games I play, I generally, I guess I play the default controls, but there are a couple keys that are really important to me to change. And if there is no functionality like that to me is just like, okay, no, I'm not really keen.
Does that mean that
And
you
then
you have
also-
really good macro, but your precision isn't very good?
My precision is okay. It's like okay, but so like when we were playing this at PC Gamer Weekend, we were doing the single player thing, like mind you. But one thing to me that I find really tilting is that you have the mini map on the bottom right.
Oh yeah.
And then you've got the unit panel like at the very bottom of your screen. You've got the resources at the very bottom of your screen. Whereas in StarCraft you have it in the top right, and the minimap is on the left. In Company of Heroes you have the
I can
minimap on
answer
the left, and the resources are also a little higher up. So it's like at least for me, I found that my eyes sort of going up to looking at the bottom left for my resources, then right next to that I have my units, and all of those icons also, they're not very clear on what each individual unit is. You actually have to sort of go in and look a little closer, but I think that just comes with experience, really.
Isn't it the same in Co? Is that like everything's at the bottom apart from VPs?
No, they're not in the bottom. They're a little higher up. But like in Dawn of War, everything's like literally at the bottom of your screen, and I find that really uncomfortable. You've also got the minimap on the right hand side. Like if I could, I would want to switch to the minimap on
You
the
can.
left. You can? Okay, good.
Oh,
Because
okay.
that's really important to me.
So yeah, I had the same kind of opinion about that minimap question, and I posed
It's like
to them,
the
and they said
user
they changed
interface to me was really messy. But I don't not like the user interface design right now in the current state it's in.
So you'd rather have the resources at the top? Is that what you're saying?
Either at the very top, like in StarCraft, or where you have them in Company of Heroes, and like a slightly larger interface bar for where you have your squad management and stuff like that.
Right.
Because
So-
I think it's a little too naked right now, or like at least give people the option to customize their own UI a little bit, sort of like in Arma 3, where you can put wherever you want, whatever you want, wherever you want.
I want to compare the DAO 3 interface now, because I just opened up Dawn of War 2 to see how they've done it, and that's quite nice. It's the same as Co, where at the bottom right corner, you have your production, above that's your resources, and at the right, you have like all your units. And I think that works quite well. Let's see what the Dawn of War 3 I think UI design is something very underappreciated when it comes to RTS games. It doesn't get a lot of attention.
It's
I
it's
expect,
really important.
I expect if they have really, I mean, if they really are following MOBAs, you may even find that you get customizable sets of that. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's, you know, you look at Dota. I don't know if League necessarily has it. Dota's got like huge amounts of customizable UI,
Yeah.
which is like really, really cool for all the factions and things. And that's exactly the kind of DLC. I'm sorry to throw that word out there. That's exactly the
No,
kind
Danny,
of.
that's it.
taboo.
It's fucked.
That's exactly the
Dawn
kind of
of War has
DLC that Relic would be into, you know, is customizable UI.
But you don't
Helping
you don't do
hands.
UI as
wouldn't do-
DLC.
yeah, I
that's
wouldn't do that as DLC.
That's wrong.
Well, wait, faceplates in Company of Heroes 2 are paid.
Yeah, but that's
DLC,
not
right?
you. That's not functionality of a game. I've
No,
got,
no, but I'm talking about design and not moving things. You know, talking about like design of it. You know, having factional UI.
Just
is,
because
Right.
cosmetics, basically.
Yes,
Cosmetics up
yes.
to you.
Yeah, okay.
that's
Because
cool.
like to
oh,
me, 'cause I
oh
think
wow, that's ugly. Oh no, I have DAO 3 open right now. A video of it. The resources are in the bottom left
Yeah,
corner.
that's really
I
ugly.
couldn't
That's
find it
terrible.
underneath the YouTube play button. Oh, that's terrible. Jesus, that should be above. Yeah, I didn't realize
Yeah.
that. I'm glad you mentioned that
like-
actually. Jeez.
Yeah.
Well, can I just mention something? From playing Company Heroes 1 to Company Heroes 2, the resources were, you know, it was like, was it horizontal? Or vertical? Sorry, vertical, and then it changed to horizontal. and that threw me off for a while. But now I don't, it's just second nature after playing it, for a while. It wasn't a big deal. So I personally think that yes, I probably would like the resources to be higher and in Dawn of War 3, but I think people would just get used to it. It's not as big as a deal than I would, than other aspects of the game.
But it's about making the game accessible for new players. I mean, RTS is as daunting as gaming can get. You want to make it streamlined and as accessible. You don't want people to have to relearn a whole new game and a whole new UI every time they play a new RTS.
Yeah, I agree with that, yeah.
I mean, to me, it would make a lot of sense that you just sort of copy the UI design of one of your most successful franchises, Company of Heroes. Copy and paste, really.
Or
Like, why
other
not?
DAO games are fine.
I don't understand this whole thing with that. Okay, we're releasing a new game, guys, so we have to be super new and super fresh. So we're gonna fuck everything up and put it in like really weird places. At least give people the option to, customize it.
Yeah,
well, they
so
have
that
apparently, so definitely credit for that. Well, the minimap you said, Hans.
Yeah, well, that's just the minimap, but I mean, like, if I
Yeah.
could just move the resources up a little bit and stuff like that.
I think that definitely segues into a really good topic, is how faithful should a sequel be? I mean, before we go there, I just want to say that I think Dota 2 is the only game that has the minimap in the bottom right corner. I'm pretty sure other than that, everything is left. Like League of Legends is left, the minimap.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just
I
trying
think
to think.
isn't League
left.
default on the right side?
Yeah,
Or is it right?
I think League default's on the right side.
Oh,
actually.
really?
That's probably right.
Oh,
yeah.
so they do it on the right for MOBAs. Oh, but is Dota left now? I'm confused.
Just
No,
look
no,
up just open
Dota's-
any League of Legends stream on anything.
Twitch.
Yeah. They also, League does have quite customizable UI. Just while we're on the topic still,
they
especially in
improved
terms
that a
of
lot,
in terms of size. And in other types of optimization, but you can make the UI tiny, you can make the UI bigger, different parts of the UI bigger or smaller. Some people actually run the mini-map entirely on a second screen,
Yeah.
so like they use a screen capture, they run the mini-map on this massive screen so they don't miss anything when it comes to how important the mini-map is when it comes to League of Legends and things like that. So just launch any of these and we'll find out, but I'm pretty sure it defaults to the right.
Okay, so in that case, I think Dota's bottom left, because I remember playing
Yeah,
Dota
Dota's
and like
left.
you always click it by accident when you're scrolling down, whereas it makes a lot more sense in League.
Yeah,
bottom right
yeah,
for League,
yeah.
because in a MOBA, at least in like a League of Legends Dota, you're scrolling in that kind of diagonal because you're going up down the lane, where you don't hit the bottom, you don't scroll diagonal that way very often in a MOBA. And yeah, it seems weird why they would put it on the left. Like, what were they looking at? Were they looking at Dota? Like,
Well, they
why?
must
I mean,
if they're
It's
taking
because
it
it's
from
on Warcraft 3.
Does Warcraft have it on the bottom left?
Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
Okay, well anyway, let's move on. So, unless you want to say something, Stormless?
I was just gonna say like if they have moved or allowing you to move the tactical map is just that to me is just saying like that they are trying to attract that crowd in.
Yeah.
So whichever side it sits on traditionally, if you're an RTS player, that's Relic saying, "Hey, come and play this game." If you can move it to the right, that's like you're a MOBA player. We're not going to put you off. Set it up as you want, kind of thing. But one of the things where we, just talking about, obviously we spoke a little bit about user interface and so on. Never has been a tactical map in Dawn of War, has there? Which is something we see
No.
in Company of
Yeah, I
Heroes,
don't think
which
so.
is-
No.
no.
Yeah.
which is great. I imagine that would be pretty hard with the 250 pop cap that's in Dawn of War 3. It would be a pretty messy tactical map. But mainly on the subject of maps, what's the situation with maps in Dawn of War 3? Because are they making a variety of maps that all have lanes and turrets, or is it one map with 3 lanes that everybody will be playing routinely at launch?
They have different maps.
Yeah,
They do have different maps.
They've definitely got a variety of maps, and sometimes there's multiple shields, sometimes there's only one shield. For instance, the 3v3 map I was playing, there was only there was like one shield, and when there was on the other 1v1 map that I played, there was 2 shields that you could target, and then it was a choice of which way you could attack the base from. You could take this shield up, take that turret, then attack the power core from the left hand side, or you could do the opposite on the right hand side. And your team could prioritize. But on this 3v map, you just had one. It looked like just one shield and one turret. So it's interesting how they're doing it, and I think it'll be different for all different types of maps, to be honest.
So there's different
That is
maps,
nice,
but there's only
actually.
one
Yeah.
game mode.
Yeah, currently.
Yeah, and that causes a lot of controversy because it feels like how hard would it have been for them to release a VP game mode? Like, 1 or 2 maps, just a regular Dawn of War 2 / Company of Heroes style map with VPs. And then all of a sudden, no one would have given a shit about this MOBA thing. Like, I mean, the MOBA game mode, like, it looks interesting, like, it could be fun, but it's at the expense of a traditional RTS game mode. Like, why not both? ¿Por qué no los dos?
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah. You know the meme.
Yeah.
I don't know, part of me does think like it does make sense to get everybody who's on the game playing multiplayer focused down one channel initially. Like I part of me does think that makes sense, because if you had like an Annihilation mode that was competitive and a MOBA mode that was competitive, you're then running separate leaderboards, which, leaderboards, Relic has been an issue previously.
How many years did it take before
In
we
a
got
year.
official leaderboards?
Give it a year and a half, we'll have leaderboards for.
The Dawn of
But
War, yeah.
I really I don't like that way of thinking though. It's like, yeah, well they were shitty at doing this thing, so.
But no, I don't.
why
I
should
do
they
think
make
it
an
makes
effort
sense.
to-
Like I think it's going to be the RTS players that are coming in, like learning this new mode, doing well, and then hopefully it attracts some of the MOBA crowds to come in and play the game. They see that these RTS players are really good, they get more involved in that, and then I mean, I did see on a YouTube video that was kind of discussing this topic already, and they were saying, well, Relic have said we will look at working on new game modes after launch. Which,
Yeah, what does that mean? It means in a year's
Yeah.
time we'll get something.
Yeah.
because of
it
the thing-
basically means there's no plan other than this. That's what it means. It means
It looks like they're
at
forcing
this
people
state
to do
right
it.
now there is no plan.
nothing
But-
concise.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
so we have to look at the direction of that, of what it's doing, and how the online community is going to be. But they will be focused on that one game mode, and then hopefully all the competitive is centered, assuming there is competitive. We haven't heard anything about that really, have we?
But I mean, like, especially for a game like this, something that people have been wanting for a very long time. Dawn of War 2 obviously was a flop compared to Dawn of War 1. in terms of-
Financially, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like, and even playing it, like, I thought it sucked.
Whoa, whoa. Careful, man. Careful.
Easy.
You're going to trigger me.
No. I hated Dawn of War 2.
Wow, man.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
Can I just say, I agree with Tenchi. I hated
I'm
Wow.
I'm also on that boat.
Wow.
Wow.
But
Because
it's
Dawn
so
of
similar to
War
Company
so
of Heroes.
cool.
I played the tabletop game, right? The miniatures game. I played a lot of that. I invested like at least 1,000 hours into that. And so when Dawn of War was announced, I was so excited for that, and I loved the games, and the expansions were also amazing. Like Winter Assault was
Yeah.
probably the best one they made.
Love that one.
Yeah.
And then Dawn of War 2 came, and it completely changed the formula. And now Dawn of War 3, I don't understand, because at a launch of a game like this, very anticipated, very hyped, the most important part is the very start of the game. This is where you attract the central crowd. It's like Tom Clancy's The Division is a really good example of this. Huge marketing, really hyped up. Tons of people get into it at the start, but it was terrible, so it dropped off. And then they released a few patches, a few fixes. I did go back and play it a bit. It's actually much better. I'm having a lot more fun. But are people coming back? No. Because the first initial impression you get within the first 24, 48 hours, maybe first week, is what counts. And people go into this, people want Dawn of War RTS. They don't want fucking MOBA. So I think what's going to happen is people are going to go in. A lot of people are probably going to pick this game up. I'm probably going to end up picking this game up, even though I said I'm not going to, just to give it, an actual chance, give it a feel. But I get the feeling that it's going to be similar to what happened with The Division. That we are going to go in there, we're not going to get the experience that we're looking for, and then even if they fix it, even if they release new game modes, make it into like Company of Heroes-esque, like, because that would be really good, probably, then people aren't going to be coming back. Or the number of people coming back is going to be very small. You need to, like, grab people by the testicles at the very start of a launch. That's where you hook people.
Yeah,
Like, that's what all the Blizzard game has done really well. That's what some of these FPS titles have done really well, because like once you lose the crowd, it's really hard to get back those numbers.
I think they will. Like the thing is that the sales will be deceptive here, because Like I'm one of these people. I meet a lot of people with the same opinion. Like in my honest judgment, like all they had to do was get Dawn of War 1 and put the new graphics on it. Like that's it,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And that would be probably a game that I play for years on end.
Same.
And do a good job of that. But
Yeah,
I mean,
it leads back to what I was about to segue to before, is like, what should a sequel be? And I think if you look at any franchise, the best sequels, the most popular sequels, are always the ones that are the most faithful, the ones that don't really even change that much. Whether it's Age of Empires, whether it's Counter-Strike, which is probably the
Yeah.
best example, whether it's...
That is.
Go on.
Sorry, go on. No,
Okay,
you
well,
finish your.
whether it's like Doom, as a single player game, very traditional. I mean, StarCraft is a difficult example because there's such an age difference between them. But like StarCraft, it is very faithful to the original Brood War game.
Not a lot of parallels you could draw to that. When
Yeah,
it comes to console games as well, in terms
Call
of
of
staying
Duty,
true to the genre as well.
there's
Zelda.
yeah,
The Zelda
Zelda.
games. Like all of
Ratchet and
those, the
Clank.
three-dimensional Zelda games, they've all maintained the same formula. The only one that was like shifting that was Twilight Princess for the GameCube.
I mean,
But all of the other.
even Company of Heroes, like we all criticize Company of Heroes for all of its various flaws, and there's a lot of them, but it's a good sequel because it's very faithful. It's Company of Heroes. Like you immediately feel Company of Heroes. It just has, some faction design problems and balance and things like that.
I'm really glad you brought that up because there are so many prime examples of titles that are released nowadays, and it's I want to say it's generally very black and white in how they've been received. Like commercially, and then in terms of how the community behind them perceive the games. And as you brought up some really good examples, Counter-Strike. I want to specifically talk about Doom, for instance, because its software, if you compare the very first iteration of Doom, it was straightforward, fast-paced, gory action. And then Doom 3 completely changed. Not very successful. It was a lot of people played it, but not too many liked it generally. But then you go back to Doom, the new one, the Doom 4, I guess, but we just call it Doom.
Self-titled.
Yeah, it's just again fast-paced, gory, non-stop action, and it maintains lots of these basic functions from the first game. No reloading. You can carry an infinite amount of guns.
No iron sights.
Like tons of ammo. Generally no iron sighting. The one thing they changed was like the glory kills was where like if you do a certain amount of damage to a monster, you can go close up and like execute it, and it'll drop some HP and some ammo. And a lot of people were skeptical about that mechanic, but it actually helped with the flow of the gameplay because that's what Doom was about. Quick, brutal gameplay that's just never ending. There's never like supposed to be a lull in the action, like in the first Doom 1 and Doom 2. And they did that really, really, really well. And how did Doom do? Like if you look at all of the critics and all of those things, amazing. I bought the game, I finished it in 2 days. One of the best single player experiences I've had in years.
But all those things have had like very positive kind of like pre-release reviews and community discussions. Like the thing with Dawn of War is that you don't know what to expect from the next release. Like now the three games that they've got are entirely different.
And that's the issue. That's what I mean. Like that's
so you think you got to think on like 10 years time, right? So Company Heroes 1, for instance, we knew Company Heroes 2 was coming out, and we all had this vision in our heads of what it was going to be. For me, it basically was what I imagined it was going to be. With some Company Heroes 1, some added features, the graphics were upped, etc., etc. Like Dawn of War, like if it comes to like Dawn of War 4, I will not be able to
It'll
get
be a card
excited
game
about anything because it'll be hard.
It'll be like Blitz and Halo Wars 2.
Dawn of Cards.
Yu-Gi-Oh style guy.
I
summon the Elder.
but that's what I mean. Like if you look at all of those games where they did something so well, why? I don't know. Just to me, it doesn't make any sense to constantly have this need to change the basic formula.
Yeah, I agree.
I know why I know why they must be doing it is because the RTS has been on the decline, right?
Yeah.
Dawn of War 2, if they look back on it and probably went, well, they must perceive that Dawn of War 2 was better than 1. Their team must be, proud of that, of Dawn of War 2. They took it that direction and then gone, oh, it didn't do well. Let's change it again. But they don't want to revert back to the first one. They want to go, what's popular at the moment?
Yeah, but that's what I don't understand. Like
they just jump on the bandwagon of the MOBAs at the moment.
Yeah, but like the Doom guys did that. Counter-Strike guys did that. from like CS:GO and CS 1.6 are much closer than CS Source.
Oh,
and
Dota.
CS
We didn't
1.6.
mention Dota.
Yeah.
Dota 2.
Like and Dota 1 and Dota 2. Like they've maintained these very old formulas of how the games are supposed to be played, and if something hasn't been successful, they've sort of gone back to it. You know?
Civ
Um,
5,
it's-
Civ 6, like the Civilization. There's so many examples.
Yeah,
of-
those are like
Yeah.
untouched fundamentally, right?
Where
But it is based on success, though, you know. So if it's successful, they can maybe continue it. If, you know, maybe that's why the change is coming in. Maybe it's not as successful as they wanted to. Relic is a business at the end of the day, like fundamentally there to make money.
But that's what I
so-
think it doesn't make any sense from a business perspective. Like if you have a successful plan and something that you've seen, like this works, this sells.
And Dawn of War
like
1
this.
did. Like,
Well,
that
it
game
does-
would have done
does it?
so well financially. The whole series.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Now then they're like, oh guys, we have to change everything and make everything like not
Yeah.
as great.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Tenchi in that they really are taking an unnecessary risk. I think that's the main thing to look at, because if you say you have a new games company and they release something that say they release Dawn of War 3, but Dawn of War 3 has no prior, no fan base or anything like that, that's
A new
that's a
IP.
good risk, because you don't know where the niche is. But with Relic releasing Dawn of War 3, they already have this huge fan base, and by introducing the MOBA style as the first game, they run the risk of not only alienating their previous community, they also run the risk of releasing a game that isn't going to fill a niche. I mean, are there any people out there who want to play an RTS MOBA? Are we going to draw people from a MOBA fan base? You just don't really know. So the entire success of the game, as Tenchi said, is predicated on how well the launch goes. If the launch goes badly, they're in serious trouble. Had they released an initial game mode that is more of a Dawn of War 1 style, then they're at least partly safe, because there are so many people that are going to buy Dawn of War because of how much of a fan they are of the franchise and of the universe. They're going to invest into the game, and chances are, that could do pretty well. And then say they release a second game mode, which is more MOBA style, and then they draw people in from the MOBA community, or people who want to play a MOBA-based RTS, and they draw from other fan bases and kind of add on to the initial success of the game. But they run a huge risk in primarily releasing this MOBA game, and if it flops, they lose their current fan base, and they lose any potential future fan base from the MOBA community.
Yeah, I want to backtrack to something that I said earlier. How I was saying that, like, the best sequels are always ones that are faithful, but then you can look at, like, oh well, what about Command and Conquer Generals? And that, like, that was a fantastic game, one of my favorites. It was nothing like the other CNC games. It was criticized for being too StarCraft-like, for having builder units, and it ended up being a masterpiece. But there's a huge difference there. And exactly in the name, CNC Generals wasn't CNC 3. CNC Generals was a spin-off. It was CNC Generals. It was this whole new thing. And CNC 3, on the other hand, CNC 3 was very traditional. It was very faithful to Tiberian Sun, to the original. So for this approach, if Relic wanted to do this weird-ass MOBA RTS thing, that's fine. Just don't call it Dawn of War 3. Call it, I don't know, whatever the fuck you want to call it.
Warhammer 40k.
Yeah, like
Blah, blah,
Space
blah.
Marine, the FPS game, and that was a fantastic game. I loved that. And it wasn't, Dawn of War FPS. It was Space Marine. It was different. And I think for that same reason, as much as I love Dawn of War 2, I think it's a fantastic game for all of the same reasons as Company of Heroes. They're very similar games, but it was a bad sequel. It wasn't Dawn of War 2. It was a Company of Heroes spin-off. And when it had that label, Dawn of War 2, people had the expectations that it would deliver an experience similar to Dawn of War 1. And as a result, a lot of the criticisms was, it's too small scale. It's all about micro. And for a lot of people, micro is a dirty word. They want big battles. They want big strategy. And it just wasn't what they wanted. So really, there's been this huge following that's been wanting a sequel to Dawn of War for 13 years, not including the expansions for Dawn of War 1, because Dawn of War 2 in their eyes wasn't a sequel, and it really wasn't. It was a great game in its own right, but not really as a Dawn of War sequel, as a Company of Heroes spin-off. And so there was so much noise, for we want something bigger scale, we want something Dawn of War 1 like, and then so Dawn of War 3, it kind of went this bigger scale, but it does it in a way that isn't familiar and isn't faithful. Like, I think we were saying it needs to be just an updated version of Dawn of War 1, but like it obviously needs some changes. Like Dawn of War 1 has plenty of flaws. You play it back now, and I played it recently. It has a lot of flaws, but it's easily fixable. You could easily mold that into something great. And so I think that that's just a general sentiment across the board, is that if you are going to do massive changes to a game, it shouldn't be a sequel. Like say if we get Company of Heroes Modern Warfare, which would be fantastic, but don't call it Company of Heroes 3. Call it Company of Heroes Modern Warfare. And then if that works, then you can implement it as a sequel if people like it. But you're risking so much. It's the expectations, and it's the same with movies. Is people like a safe pick.
Relic have given themselves security by releasing it under Dawn of War 3, because even if it was a game that wasn't Dawn of War, you just release it under that name, and Dawn of War Warhammer carries enough of a following that
but isn't that a double-edged sword in this case?
In what sense?
The best example is actually CNC4. Like that got shat on so hard. That game was terrible. At least as a sequel, as a CNC4, as the end of the CNC saga. The gameplay, like I didn't really give it a fair chance, but some people say they like it. I can see the appeal, because it was supposed to be this spin-off. It was originally called CNC Online, and it was supposed to be this, like, it was aimed at the Eastern market as some like kind of weird spin-off thing. But then EA were like, well, we can make a quick buck if we make it a sequel. We'll tack on some shitty single-player campaign and we'll sell more. And they did, but as a result, the expectation was there. They changed too much. The expectations weren't met. And as a result, people hated it, and it flopped horribly. And I think that's so analogous to what we have in Dawn of War 3.
Well, can I just say that for all this worrying about, we're all talking about, how we're worried about Dawn of War 3 being this big, scary MOBA. But after playing the multiplayer for a little bit, I definitely feel like it feels like Dawn of War 1. So, yes, there are these elite units. Yes, there are these MOBA elements, but it definitely feels like Dawn of War. It doesn't feel like it should be called something else. I definitely think it feels like Dawn of War to me.
I must admit, when I played the single player, I did feel that. Like, it felt like Dawn of War 1. But, yeah, the multiplayer just seems unnecessary. Like, it could have felt like Dawn of War 1 with victory points. It could have felt like Dawn of War 1 without victory points. Just not these fucking lanes. Like, yeah, like, I'm sure...
It isn't exactly these lanes. It's not it's like... like any map, if you take Company Heroes maps, for example, you can go left, you can go mid, you can go right. It's not a specific lane that you need to,
the
like a
difference
corridor.
There is that you're not forced to go anywhere in Company of Heroes. That's one thing that drives me a little bit nuts from the RTS perspective, is that all strategy, in my opinion, like should be the responsibility of your own brain.
Yeah,
like
agreed.
If you anywhere you want to go on the map, provided you think you can take an area, like should be your willingness to go. I don't want to be told that, do you know what I mean? Like, I have to go over here and cap this or destroy this, then move somewhere else. Because the focal point, the nice thing for me, especially in other Relic games, is like the focal points have always been areas of strategic importance on a map. Take a hill with the high ground, take some important building like a church in the center of a map, that helps your strategy.
Well, you can
and just allows you
that.
to do... Precisely, yeah.
So in Dawn of War 3, the high ground is also very important, as units from the high ground can shoot and I believe have a bit longer range than units that are below them. They will see them first. And you need to try and rush those cover points, because that will be very influential in who decides the first initial engagement. So they are these strategic points on the map you do need to grab. And for instance, you have your drop pods, you have your the Eldar can spawn in these buildings around the map, so they can set up a ninja base, for instance, in the corner of the map, and then use that to attack the enemy from an angle that that only that player could have thought of, for instance. So I think the game is definitely not limited to these lanes. You've got different variety of units that can counter these terrain problems. For instance, you have assault marines that can just jump from a ledge to another ledge. They can get out of these areas, and so that the map isn't restricting to some units. I wouldn't be too worried about thinking it's just a lane MOBA thing. It's not that. Don't worry.
What do you guys think of the art style?
It's good. It is good to hear that your experience is of it are good. You know what I mean? Because I did enjoy the single player that I played. And for what I've played, it's been an enjoyable game. Like, my worry is it going to last more than 3 months? That's where I'm. So to hear that you're enjoying it is good. Be honest, I think hopefully a lot of people, given that you're one a streamer and two a big competitive player, like, I think people will hopefully be able to get some kind of positives from what you're saying.
Yeah, I agree. It certainly it inspires my optimism a bit more that Hans is enjoying it. And it's something that we were talking about before we started recording is like, why is there an NDA? Like, Hans can't stream the game, and no one in beta can stream it. And I think what that does is it gives us a very skewed perception, because we're watching the gameplay videos on GameSpot, IGN channels, and it's by these press, these guys that aren't real gamers. They're just fucking
Press.
yeah, they're just like these random people that play a game for like a couple of hours, write some obviously like bought out fake biased,
Buzzword.
but yeah, and they're not like real gamers. Like, I don't want to be hell like elitist, like, you're not a real gamer, but like, I think you know what I mean, is that like when you read these
like people who don't care about the game enough.
they're so in the
Yeah.
industry, and they're obviously just marketing pieces for the publishers, and they have no
Yeah.
integrity. But what I'm getting at is that when the only footage you get is of these people who aren't real gamers playing it, rather than someone like Helping Hans, who is according to his Twitter bio, is a Company of Heroes professional or whatever, and so what that means is
I get paid.
yeah.
It means I'm a...
Technically, yeah, you are. And what that means is that we look at this and we go, man, this game sucks. There's no micro. They just attack moving their blob of units. This game is shit. Whereas in Hans is like, well, actually, no. There is a lot of micro. You have grenades, you have your jetpacks, you have all these things. But it warps the perception because people like Hans aren't allowed to stream because of some draconian NDA for no reason. Then, as a result, the only footage we get is of just fucking shitters that don't know how to play RTS. Like,
Well,
It's brutal,
that to
but
me-
it is true, I would say.
You would agree?
I don't understand why developers don't want to give their game and, to pro players that know how RTSs are handled and let them go at it, because that's the best marketing for them. They'll be able to show off the game in its best available light. And I've been sending letters to RTS developers for ages and years telling them about this.
I don't know if I 100% agree that is the best advertisement for them, because like they also run the risk of people, like, let's just say you played a game and you weren't good at it straight away. You decided you didn't like it. Do you know what I mean? And then you started slating it, and that picked up by your viewers or whatever.
But doesn't it work the
it
same
could also
way, like...
go very badly for them. And I personally think you should be able to stream the beta stuff. I do think it's a good decision, but it just kind of suggests to me that Relic maybe aren't sure, or they're not confident in how this is going to be reviewed.
have you seen the
possibly.
dislike bombs on all of their videos? Ever since they announced Dawn of War 3, they've had like 50-60% dislikes on their videos. And it was clear from the start that people hated the art style, people hated the MOBA-ish feel of it, and that was before there was even MOBA elements. I think we talked about the art style for a while. Is like the art style, more than the gameplay itself, is representative of the departure and the lack of willingness to honor their legacy and their fan base and their franchise. Is like, rather than following the traditional dark, gritty art style, which Dawn of War 1, Dawn of War 2, Space Marine, the FPS had, which is the way that the tabletop is supposed to be in the grim darkness of the far future. There is only war. Instead, we get this bright, cartoony, goofy, pew-pew, laser beams, happy League of Legends, StarCraft art style.
It reminds me more of Heroes of the Storm than anything.
Yeah. Like, it's not complete League of Legends, but it's like, it has that feel to it. And it has this dissonance of like, it's Warhammer, it's dark and it's grim, but it's also bright and colorful. And people associate that with League of Legends and StarCraft even. And there's this irrational dislike of StarCraft and MOBAs within the RTS community. Like, I love MOBAs. Like, I've played heaps of League of Legends. I've played heaps of Smite. I've done casting for those. I've done events for those games. I love MOBAs, but when I want to play RTS, I want to play RTS. When I want to play MOBAs, I want to play MOBAs. And for most people are idiots. Most people just have this like irrational hate for like, I'm too cool to play MOBAs. I'm in my corner playing RTS because I'm the enlightened. Only I know what the best games are. Like even within communities, you'll have because StarCraft is the most popular RTS and it's cool. Then you'll have those people that are they want to feel special because they're too hipster to jump on the cool StarCraft bandwagon. And that's same with different MOBAs, League of Legends and Dota. And the communities always have this in tight defensiveness of like they pride themselves on being the special people that like know what the best game is, and so for a lot of people the association is not positive, and that association is clearly there. And yeah, I don't like the art style. I think it's despicable. What do you guys think?
Do you know what? I hated it at first, and then when I sat down and played it, I think like it doesn't scream to me what Dawn of War is all about. No, like I think we probably all could agree on that. But the art style, I don't mind it when I'm sitting playing it on a screen, like when it's in front of me. The issue I've always got with the art style at the moment is that it does not translate well to Twitch and YouTube. It just looks really tacky on streams, if I'm honest.
Actually, on that subject, I think the very original footage that was launched it was E3 last year. Actually, it was running at like 20 FPS. Like people had analyzed the footage. It wasn't running at 30 FPS. So the performance was really bad on their like press release footage. And so that was certainly part of the reason why people were so negative to its response, especially given Company of Heroes 2's unfortunate history with bad optimization.
Yeah,
it's built on the same engine, isn't it?
Yeah, when they're loading up the game, the engine 3 comes up on the loading, one of the loading
Essence
menus.
Engine
So
3.
it is the same Essence 3 engine. But after playing it for those 2 hours, I didn't feel like even with there was a lot of action going on, I didn't see any performance drop for me personally in the couple of hours I was just playing it now. So
I don't think
it looks
you will
good.
because Dawn of War 2 ran absolutely fantastically. Like that game, was hitting FPS above like 120.
But was
constantly
bug splat a thing there too? Like if you ran the game for too long?
No.
No, it's mainly just Company of Heroes, I think, that suffered from issues with that engine.
Okay.
And I don't know exactly what.
Well, we were told why. Like, I don't know if we're
kinda
supposed
do,
to say
yeah.
this, but it is in Relic's defense, so they can't get mad. The reason why Code 2 was so poorly optimized was because Company of Heroes 2 it was in development during when THQ went bankrupt, and they were auctioned off to Sega, and so basically. A lot of the team left, a lot of the programmers left because they thought they were losing their jobs. They wanted to find somewhere else. And so you had a shift in development, programmers leaving. So it was a little bit kind of slapped together. And as a result, the optimization wasn't too good. And I mean, it's lucky that we even got Company of Heroes 2 given the circumstances. Like it could have easily been scrapped. But
they were going to release it. THQ were going to release it before they went bankrupt, but I think Sega took it and then they said they were going to develop it a little bit further before they released it. So yeah, we could have had Company Heroes 2 even worse.
Yeah, and
so we're actually
they're like, wait, this game can be monetized.
Yeah. And it even
DLC. Everybody stand still. This game.
But what we were told about Dawn of War 2 was that because from the start, like it's been solid in production with no interruptions, as a result, it's going to have much better performance, much less crashing, more stability, and it'll be running better than Company of Heroes 2. And so I just wanted to put that in there because I don't want to feel like we're being too unfair on Relic.
No, for sure.
And from what we've played of it, it does feel a lot smoother than what we saw on YouTube for sure.
But can we sort of go back to because like the main gripe with the main gripe for me is just like the fundamental ideas behind the game in itself, like the game design. Because I just like Danny was touching upon, that you as a player create the incentives to create points of contention on the map when the map is sectioned off as is. In these multiplayer segments that I've been watching now on YouTube, it just doesn't really tickle my fancy. It's it looked.
I mean, they tried. I know what you're saying. Like it's weird. Relic don't want people to be able to close games off instantly.
But like
Like,
that,
you know,
and
you get that from base
to me,
defenses.
that to me
but
is just like such a stupid idea, because like that means that if you're really proficient at pulling off these super cutting edge, like on the second base timings to kill your opponent, that to me is like a good measure of skill, and equally so, like the player who manages to like, oh shit, this attack is coming, and he musters a defense and manages to just barely hold on. Like that stuff is sick as shit to watch in like any game, you know.
I
Like,
agree with that. Yeah.
I've watched some of Callum's generals casting, and there have been some of those games like that. Those are sick.
They go in
You
like
get
2
some of those
minutes, yeah.
moments- Yeah, like,
but even what surprises me as well is like even MOBAs do actually have that kind of functionality with your kills you get like straight at the start. You know, people running jungles and
yeah,
whatever,
exactly.
And,
like in League of Legends,
Like
or in-
Blake's
or in
teammates.
Dota.
yeah, I think I mean Hans will know more about Hans will know more about this than anyone else at the moment. But there, I'm hoping that there's still things that you can do at the start of the game that massively put you on the back foot if you mess it up.
Yeah, and I think that's...
Well-
No, you go ahead, Hans.
Go on. All right, sorry. I was just going to say, well, the thing is, the turrets seem to cover the entirety of the base entrances, so it doesn't seem that you're possible to get into the base to be able to take out a key building, unless your opponent does something silly and build their base defenses, their production facilities outside their the protection of their turret.
Yeah.
But I think you could still probably possibly rush, like I said, these key locations. For instance, if you're orcs, you could probably rush forward and you could put up your warg tower early, and that could or maybe you could put that on like on a cutoff, so that acts as like a sentry turret, because that actually has a guy, a Gretchen, I think, on top that shoots people down. So that could work, and you can work around that as a very aggressive early build that could really put your opponent on the back foot if you went for his kind of his choke point, so he can't push forward on the map. So I can see that possibly working, but I don't see any potential like instant you can get into the opponent's base and take their key building out because it's defended by the turret.
I mean, Co doesn't have that
So,
either.
I mean,
Doesn't that just sort of make the game that, okay, I've gone and got this really good advantage, and then if the players are equal skill, then like I should be able to capitalize on this. And what I'm essentially doing is like I've won the game, but it's just going to take me another 20 minutes to get you to leave the game. And that to me is just why?
It's like TVT.
But that's something if you are like, and there are bad people in every community, but the MOBA community seems to me to be the type of people to stay in a game like that until
Von
the
Ivan.
end,
I mean,
even just
that's-
walk away
that's-
from the
that's-
computer.
But that's because
Well, no.
like in at least in League of Legends, I don't know how Dota is, but you have to stay in a certain amount of time before you can even surrender. And then there are also repercussions by leaving games early.
And you can't
So,
surrender
yeah,
in Dota.
they
Yeah, like but like just for as an example, like in League of Legends, if you leave too many games, you get like a ban. You can't queue in ranked games for a certain amount of time. In CS:GO, they have the same thing. You can't queue. Like I've seen people get like 2-week bans because they leave a game that we're losing. So they literally can't queue for ranked games. In Dota, they have the solution to it's not really the same, but like if you're super toxic and you get enough reports, you only get stuck with players who have a lot of reports for toxicity. So.
Yeah, you were gonna say something like ages ago.
yeah,
Sorry.
no, that's right. Yeah, I believe things like that are fine. Things like that, as long as they don't artificially change the game. Like, there's a difference between having a big fuck off tower that destroys absolutely everything.
Panzer headquarters.
You can't run anything into it. You can't do any damage to it at the start of the game. There's a
Panzer
difference
headquarters.
between that and say the implementation of towers in League of Legends, which are more of a strategic point. I mean, at the moment, you take the first tower out of the game, you get a massive gold bonus, so that gives you incentive for taking that out. They deny your opponent's creeps, which denies them gold. There are a lot of strategic elements to it. So it's not just an artificial method of making sure games don't end within the first couple of minutes, which is a bit of a problem when it comes to games like Zero Hour, where you can close a game out in 1 minute. It's like, oh, that was kind of, whatever. But yeah, elements like that are strategic and add depth to the game are fine. Artificial elements that are just, you can't go past this point or do anything for this part of the game because we say so are stupid. So
Yeah.
So,
And that's what I feel those points are, like, because what is it first, James? It's like a shield generator first, right? And
But
then
the
you have
shield generator does act like a requisition point as well, because when I've hovered over it, you get a certain amount of income from the
okay.
shield generators as well. So it's kind of like you say with the tower thing. You can take the tower out, you stop the opponent getting that extra resource. So shield generator, they would get, same thing would apply, and that would put your opponent on the back foot.
Okay, so something else I want to change the subject to, unless you guys have something else to add in before we move on. No? Okay, so before we were talking about how Dawn of War 3, it feels like a departure from the original Dawn of War 1 and even Dawn of War 2 to an extent, in favor of this kind of weird MOBA bandwagon thing. And for a lot of reasons, whether it's the gameplay, the elite system, whether it's having these weird things like the stealth bushes like League of Legends, the art style, like it's not very faithful. But on top of that, I think another great example is how they've removed sync kills. You know how in Dawn of War 1 and Dawn of War 2, how when you would have like a dreadnought that like kills someone, he like picks him up and he does this like crazy ass animation and it's just gory as hell and it's insane and it's like, wow, it's so cool. And those are removed. Those aren't in Dawn of War 3.
Yeah.
And
They are.
Really?
You sure?
Haven't they announced it?
The dreadnoughts, or at least we played it. That's one of the things I came out of was like the dreadnought against the Eldar, and the Eldar are like crawling all over it. They're like picking the units up, like
really,
crushing. Like he was
okay,
just,
it's not in
his fist,
melee
throwing
units.
that model away.
There's no like in infantry, like you won't have infantry combat.
No, that kind of thing.
Where even in Down 1 and Down 2, you'd have sync kills of that, like you would have a squad of orcs, and a space marines. And I know in the Dawn of War 2 Elite mod they removed those because it was like bad for competitive game. But I think it's a staple of Dawn of War is that kind of excessive goriness, and the sync kills is, I think the majority of players prefer that and they like that, and it's awesome to watch. And for them to remove that for the game, again, is another slap to the face and another disregarding of their fan base by removing that core tenant, which is one of the staples of Dawn of War, is just this brutal goriness, and sync kills is like a part of that. What do you guys think?
And possibly by removing that takes away from that, again, the grim, dark aspect of Dawn of War, and it attributes to what you say is the cartooniness of it. For me personally, graphically, the game doesn't look cartoon. Playing it now, I feel like it feels good. But yeah, I think taking away the sync kills is... it's possibly good. I think it's good for balance wise, because when you're trying to kill a unit when it's doing a sync kill, you can't. I think it's invulnerable,
or it takes like 99% less damage or something.
Yeah. So that would be huge if you were just needing to, you had one unit left and it was just trying to finish off this thing and it couldn't because it was doing a sync kill. That that could swing the game. If it was a dreadnought, for instance, that was doing, because a dreadnought is a huge and key unit. So I think taking up the sync kills, even though I love the sync kills, the glory kills, whatever we want to call them, they were they were cool to watch, and I liked them a lot. I think Relic missed a trick with not allowing them in, like having an option to toggle them on and off, or having a certain game mode, or to have them on or off. But I don't know. I like them.
Yeah, it's a difficult question. I mean, it's a whole topic entirely. Is like, is sync kills a good or a bad thing? Like, that's a difficult question. But it's a staple of Dawn of War, and it has been removed. And it's just another kind of one of those things that feels like Relic really aren't trying to honor their legacy and their franchise and their fan base of Dawn of War.
I think, I have a look at that dreadnought, because there are some animations that exist in there. Like there are some things like that, 100%, but just not probably to the extent that you're talking about from previous. But the dreadnought, honestly, that just like left me speechless in terms of animations. I thought that was one of the coolest units I've ever seen. The way that it was interacting with Eldar was
I think the vehicle animations look beautiful. Like the way that the Falcon hovers around and the Vipers, like some of the vehicles looked gorgeous, but then the infantry looks so robotic. Like they look really clunky. They don't feel like they're alive. They don't feel like they're real units. Like in Dawn of War 2 and Company of Heroes, they're very fluid, especially Company of Heroes 1, more so than Company of Heroes 2. And like, the way that they walk around, the way they animate, they just feel very robotic. If you look at gameplay of Dawn of War 3, you look at the infantry, the way they interact, the way they move, they just feel really boring. and that's another kind of staple of Company of Heroes Dawn of War is the units have felt very lifelike. The melee animations, the way they run around the field, it helps create that cinematic experience which Relic games are known for. Like it's interesting that Relic are kind of, they're a studio that's been fantastic at innovating. Like they have done the most innovations in RTS. Like the original Homeworld was like kind of the first space game. Impossible Creatures, you would build your own armies, and it had like, you know, melee and range done really well. Dawn of War then had a lot of new mechanics. Company of Heroes, all of their games have innovated so much. So it's like it feels weird to criticize them for innovating, or rather stealing mechanics from other games. But again, I think the difference is that it's a sequel. It's not a new game. All right. Anything else? All right. What do you guys think of the heroes? Because looking, I know we were talking about this the other day, comparing to Dawn of War 2, is when you look at the heroes, their abilities feel very arbitrary.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, arbitrary is certainly the way to go about it, and we probably had about a 20-minute conversation about this, just this specifically. So take so it's a knight something, isn't it? The
Imperial
Space
Knight.
Marine, Imperial Knight. Yeah, okay. So one of the abilities was like a Gatling in a cone damage dealing thing, and it was just like all it was is just.
You draw a
Stands
cone.
there, you draw a cone, it pops out, sprays all the infantry inside the cone. It's not at all interesting. It just, there's no depth to the ability, and what we were comparing that to is the Dreadnought in Dawn of War 2.
Which is a great game, by the way.
Which is a fantastic game that we all love.
Kappa.
It's amazing. We actually do love Dawn of War 2 a lot. So the Dreadnought, which
I only wish it
with
held
an
my
assault
attention
cannon,
long enough.
and the assault cannon barrage on the Dreadnought, just comparing that as an element, and no, as in an arc, you pick the horizontal traverse and like where it is vertically, and you have to, it's actually properly aimed. You have to time it correctly because the Dreadnought doesn't fire straight away, and it does a line of assault cannon barrage damage that attacks a squad. But it's a very situational ability. You don't know if you want to be regular firing. It also means that the Dreadnought's stationary and you can't move it around while that's happening. So it's a very situational ability. You might just want the regular fire from the assault cannon instead of the ability. And as again, the comparison to the knight is just, here's a cone, does damage in a cone, and it's not interesting or interactive.
Exactly. Like there's so much decision making in term and precision in terms of those Dawn of War abilities, and it has a lot of strategic depth behind it. Whereas, like, looking at all the other abilities, Dawn of War 3, like, you've got the Force Commander, the one that does front flips and Terminator armor. It's just like, click here, he spins around like Garen in League of Legends. Click here, he jumps over there and does a slam. Like, the abilities just feel so generic, and they don't really, like, feel like they make sense. Where in Dawn of War 2, and even just MOBAs, I suppose, like, most of the abilities...
They have so much personality.
Yeah, they really feel like you have to think when to use them, how to use them, in what like synergy you use them with different other pieces of the game. Like Dawn of War 2 is interesting because Dawn of War 2 actually has a lot of MOBA mechanics, or not so much MOBA, just RPG mechanics in general. But I think there's a lot of the good mechanics from MOBAs. You know, where you have the synergy of different abilities. There's a bit of team play in terms of like what heroes you go. And how you interact, and how your hero affects your units. Whereas from what I've seen in Dawn of War 3, the abilities just look like, click here to do a damage in a cone, click here to do a damage in a line, click here to do a damage in 3 different little circles. The abilities just, they just feel very tacked on and artificial. And
you forget as well. I always say you get relicked because we always say that in Company of Heroes when people use like the British
Brit
tactical
stuff.
support. The hands and
Hey, I don't use that.
or the
You know
land,
what I mean.
or the land matches. But I mean, like Dawn of War has had that brought across to it, which is something that I'm really interested to see because some things work well in a single player mode that don't work well in a multiplayer mode, and one of those is, for instance, that huge like death ray that comes down in the single player. They showcase that a lot. The
Orbital bombardment.
Orbital bombardment, which gets bigger the more you kill, but slower. So you can just wipe like a huge portion of an army, and you know, in Dawn of War, with the way that the guns are working now, you know, a lot of those armies are standing still in order to do anything. You know what I mean? So it's a huge ability, and one that can be absolutely like devastating. So yeah, I personally don't feel they have a place in multiplayer. Something that frustrates the hell out of a lot of people who play RTS. You know, but on the flip side, you know, I know that some MOBAs do have abilities like that. You know, take Dota 2. I think Zeus had or at least when I played it, it's actually what made me stop playing it. To be perfectly fair, it was like he could just shock everybody on the map, just regardless of where they were at time with this ability, and it just meant that, like, you know, you walking back to base, no one's there, you just dead.
Well, you can draw comparisons to Company of Heroes. Company of Heroes has off-map like nuke abilities, and some of them are really horrible, like, you know, artillery cover, the strafing runs, all that crap. But then you have some which are actually quite tactical. Some like, you know, the incendiary barrage, the scavenger arty, and those
Smoke
are used.
bombs.
Yeah, like they're used for area
yeah.
deny. Those are used to kind of cut off retreats. They're used to force engagements. And same with Dawn of War 2, you'll have those, the orbital bombardment, which is kind of similar, but a bit more lethal, but like a late game thing. So there's definitely a point in the, like Psionic Storm even. Like there's plenty of Psionic Storm from StarCraft. There's plenty of room for nuke-style abilities that are used for tactical purposes. And I haven't seen the Dawn of War 3 orbital bombardment, so I don't know what that's like. But if it's just like a thing that you call down and you can't really do anything to avoid it, it's just there, then that's obviously not fun for gameplay. But I certainly can't comment on that. You need to go soon, Stormless?
I do, actually, yeah.
Oh,
Why,
okay.
why, Dan? What are you gonna do?
I'm actually going to visit my grandmother.
Oh.
Oh,
She can join the
Danny.
podcast.
I should get her in for her opinion.
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Dawn of War.
Is she pre-ordered?
No.
Yeah, the
no.
£100 one, yeah.
She struggles
Granny with
to
the
log into
sledgehammer.
her computer, so I don't think she'll be playing. I mean,
Okay.
maybe then she has the skills for a MOBA.
But right, at least for a game like Dawn of War 3, right? Because it's gonna be another one of those low skill relic games.
All right, so
We'll
we
see.
can wrap
Time
up
will
soon.
Tenchi's such
Tenchi's
a
just mad he
superior
can't have
RTS
300
player,
APM.
isn't he?
There's
Feels good, man.
a couple other things that I want to talk about before we end this one then. So something that concerned me is the lessons that Relic haven't learned from Company of Heroes 2. And there's plenty of
Oh, yeah.
lessons that Relic haven't learned from Company of Heroes 1 in Company of Heroes 2. A lot of the excessive asymmetry. We were reading the PC Gamer article, and he was saying that how Eldar are a weak early game, or Eldar are a strong early game, but but they fall off late game, where Space Marine's a strong late game. And it's like, I don't know if that's intentional, but if they are deliberately designing factions to be stronger at different stages of the game, like, that is just so bad for gameplay. Like, the Veterancy 5 in Company of Heroes, OKW, the non-doctrinal King Tiger, the forward bases. If you make it unfair for different factions, it makes the game so predictable. There's no player agency because you're just kind of shoehorned into this generic dynamic of, I get pushed back early game, I lose, but if I don't lose, then I win late game. And there's no influence. It's really repetitive, and it's such a bad design for RTS games.
Yeah, no, that's probably one of my biggest gripes with. Also, one of my biggest worries, rather, with Dawn of War 3 and anything that comes out of Relic now after Company of
Let's
Heroes
pull
2.
up the quote. Like, where is it? You have it on your PC,
It's
right?
an awful quote.
PC Gamer,
I'll see if I
Dawn of
can
War
find it
3.
again.
And the other thing as well that I think is quite concerning is the way that the elites units work, because, like, it looks like they're going to be like Company of Heroes 2, the commanders. They haven't announced this, so I'm just speculating. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're microtransactions, like you buy different elite units, and then, you know, you'll have some that are stronger than others unintentionally, but it always happens. And then you kind of have, like, you know, that pay-to-win element, and pay-to-win is an annoying term because it's so overused, but there is no doubt that Company of Heroes, it is unfair for people that buy the premium content. And it limits the in-game variety when you take away all this diversity and lock it behind paid walls. The commander system in Company of Heroes is one of its downsides. It's one of the flaws of it. And the elite system, it feels like it's going to be almost the exact same.
Okay. So, in answer to that, there is a system in place which is called, I think it's like, from what I saw, it's like these skulls, and you collect this skull point system, and you use this to unlock new elite commanders. So, unlike
War
you know,
spoils.
yeah, basically what War Sports is, but they're doing it at launch, which is fantastic because code took
Yeah.
3 years or so
Fix
before
War
they
Spoils.
included War Sports. So yeah, that needs fixing as well. But at least they have something like, you know, an in-game currency that you earn while playing, and then you can use that to unlock other units, which is great.
Sound
So-
familiar to anyone that's played a MOBA?
Well, before like fix war spoils, you know, being moved into Dawn of War 3 is good, but let's just not forget that what Relic are currently doing with that system is that when they do release new content, you can't use those points to buy the new content straight away. You can buy it like a month or two later using the points. So if you want it like dead on point, even still in Company of Heroes, you have to pay to get that straight away, or be very, very lucky to get it in a drop. But you can't use those collected points for brand new content. So, you know, it is good that they have that system in, because that's something that obviously aggravated people before, and credit to Relic for actually listening and doing it.
But even then, it's still the same microtransactions, buying multiplayer content rather than buying cosmetics, and that it just seems like one of the biggest criticisms of Code 2 was the commander system, which ruined the faction design, ruined the competitive scene, because if you don't spend $15 on buying all the commanders, then you can't compete. It's just not a good business model for the longevity of the game, and I think there are better ways to do microtransactions even in RTS. I want to read this quote. So the quote from the PC Gamer article is, "The Eldar are great in the early game, but struggles to hold their own against the late game war machines of the Space Marines." Like, how is that a good thing? There is no possible reason.
It's written in a positive light, obviously, because this guy doesn't understand fundamental game design or anything about competitive gaming or esports in general. Probably doesn't
On the
even
flip side,
understand.
it's like, but there's more. You can't close out in the early game because there's turrets.
Yeah, I want to read that. I want to read that here.
What the fuck is the point of playing Eldar then? Because if you can't fuck your opponent in the early game, you're gonna get fucked in
Well,
the
it's
late
US.
game.
It's
Like,
the same as US in Code 2. They're good early games. So I want to read this other quote. Boyle, who I believe is like the lead designer or something, is a Relic staff.
Yeah.
Boyle suggests that turret behavior can be manipulated by savvy players who might use large mobs of chaff troops to split turret fire between many targets. A failed push on the turret leaves you wide open to a counterattack, so the stakes are high. Turrets essentially create extra drama in the mid-game. Fuck off. Whoever read this obviously is just a shield out corporate marketing branch for this.
Right.
For this. It's written by Tom Senior from
God.
PC Gamer, and like
Okay, that's it. He's getting he's
Yeah.
guys. We're gonna find his.
like I'm sure he's a great guy. I'm sure he'd be a cool dude. We hang out and drink some beers, but like you can tell that he obviously doesn't have an objective, critical approach. The problem is they're not critics; they are marketing, and this is what happens is when you give exclusive access to certain media outlets, they obviously want to keep that positive relationship by saying nice things. If you say bad things or even just anything other than positive praise of a game, when you have exclusive access, then you're going to jeopardize that relationship. So even if it's not a conscious, direct, I need to say nice things, it's a subconscious thing. You have that inner bias. And it's like when we played Dawn of War 3, Stormless and I, we were like some of the first people in the world to play that game. Probably like first 50 people. We were in the Relic studio. We were with our bros, my man Stormless, my man Devem, my man Jezelin. We were with the Relic staff. It was a super cool thing. We were flown out. Apart from me, they paid for like fucking half of my travel.
Still salty.
Still salty. And so like you have to admit that subconsciously that makes you have a biased opinion. Your impression of this game is going to be way more positive than it would otherwise be if you just were at home playing it, because you're in this atmosphere. And that's the same thing. Is like I'm not entirely accusing them of being directly, consciously, shilling out and pandering, even though I probably would accuse them of that. But even not necessarily. It's just when you have this exclusive access thing, you can't take this shit seriously because they're going to be so biased because of the atmosphere, and they're going to be on this exciting thing. Let alone on top of the pressures of don't say mean things because you will ruin our PR relationship with this publisher. So that was a bit of a tangent, but like read the article if you haven't. I'll link it. And like it doesn't feel like it was written by a real gamer. Like it's just.
Well, it's not even. I wouldn't say real gamer. I'd say people who play the single player as opposed to playing the multiplayer modes of something like an RTS game. I believe there's a big difference.
Well, I mean, look at the title: Dawn of War 3 multiplayer, hands-on, tough, complicated, spectacular. I'm not saying it's not written
about multiplayer. It is written about multiplayer. But if you get someone who plays single player games to write about a multiplayer who hasn't played, an RTS game competitively, it's like you can't. They're not going to have a good view on it because they're not going to be experienced enough to have that kind of a view on it. They're going to compare it to things like single player, where cool things like machine guns and big stuff is awesome and cool and whatever. And I think that's what you get a lot of the time with these bigger sites is gamers who for the majority of the time play single player games, review single player games, then trying to play something multiplayer and actually compare that to other things like Company of Heroes and things like that. So.
I mean, there's a lot more to.
Can I throw something out? Sorry,
Sure.
Just a relatively quick one. I mean, one thing that you and I, Callum, found out in September whilst at Relic Studio was that 90% of their players are verse AI. They're
any RTS game is like that. Even StarCraft, I'm sure most would play campaign or AI.
No, most are actually 1v1 and 2v2.
In StarCraft.
Yeah.
I guarantee more people would buy the campaign and never touch multiplayer. The majority of people.
Like of the active people playing now.
Well, no, but like people that buy the game. Like in any RTS game.
I don't know about that.
But it would be heavily single player. Like any RTS game would be heavily single player.
Yeah, so I mean, like the focus of Dawn of War in that aspect has to be, like for everything we're saying about the multiplayer, like the game should hopefully be a success in the single player. I think that's somewhere where the reviews do kind of dramatize it well. It's the multiplayer has been the worry, because that really is the longevity of the game, isn't it? How attractive is the multiplayer? But I think from what we've played of a single player, like relatively fun.
Relatively fun, he says.
Dawn of War 1 had the best single player. I played that so much against AI.
Amazing.
Part of it was because I was a teenager, so I wasn't really that hardcore into RTS. But like Company of Heroes and Dawn of War 2, those style of RTS games suck versus AI. You can't play those games single player like skirmish. People do, but like this is crap. Whereas like Dawn of War 1, like even like CNC Generals, like there are different types of RTS games with like base building and stuff. Like that's a lot more fun in a casual single player setting, the comp stomping. So yeah, I mean the single player could be fine, but obviously we're talking about multiplayer. We all have our own vested interests in shoutcasters and YouTubers and streamers in having that replayability. So I guess it's kind of obvious from the offset that we are really talking about multiplayer. Yeah, the single player, I don't know, it could be fun, who knows. I don't really care, to be honest. Like, even if it is great, I'll play it for 10 hours, finish it, and that's it. I have 3,000 hours on KOTOR, on Steam, that is. So
they may. I mean, they may. I would love to see something like what they've done. Do you remember with the Ardennes Assault that came out for Company of Heroes?
That was well made. That was really good.
I really like that, actually, and I would love to see something like that for Dawn of War, like expansion single player. Do you know what I mean? Like even if it was theater of war, that kind of stuff. Like they were. I thought they were really cool.
They did that in like Dawn of War 1. They had like the later game modes, Dark Crusade and Soulstorm. You had like this tactical map
with the planets,
like a world map.
Yeah, that was cool.
You could decide to launch assaults on on enemy bases and strongholds, and they would have extra resources or extra fortifications and stuff. That was pretty cool. So yeah, if they did anything like that.
It was like a bunch of skirmishes that had customization of your commander, which progressed through the scenarios. But then when you went to your like a stronghold of the enemy, it was this like really scripted scenario. But like most of the things were just a skirmish with modified things, like your heroes and such. And there was there were certain certain like quirks, like this mission would have something different on it. Yeah, I mean single player is a whole new discussion. I think the best single player in any RTS is Wings of Liberty. Like that single player was fantastic. Also, in CNC Generals, the Generals challenges more so than the campaign. I think like those quirky kind of scenarios with gimmicky things is like how you should do it. But that's definitely a different discussion. Single player is something that we haven't talked about much. Even myself and all my blogs and stuff, I haven't really cracked single player. I'm not that interested in it as much. But there's certainly a lot to talk about there. But I think we can wrap it up here. I think Stormless has to go, and we've been talking for a while anyway. Anything else you guys want to talk about before we wrap up?
Not necessarily.
That's good.
Really, I should just want to finish on the fact that I've played it for a couple of hours now in some multiplayer. I was very skeptical because I just want to repeat that everybody here apart from myself has played multiplayer. So I'm probably the best to speak on this.
Hasn't played multiplayer.
Hasn't played multiplayer. So yeah, after playing it and doing some multiplayer, I am, after being pessimistic of it, I'm now optimistic. I think it's not as as bad as people are probably thinking, and I think people should probably give it a chance. It does have MOBA aspects, but it still feels like Dawn of War.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like I've certainly more optimistic now, and we should still give it a chance. Like I'll certainly do a review for it when it comes out, and don't pre-order it. Wait until it comes out. Wait for reviews. Wait for some content to be posted once the NDAs are lifted. Who knows? It could be good, but I think the criticism stands that it's not really a faithful sequel, and they kind of missed a lot of potential there. But oh well. All right. Well, make sure you follow these guys on Twitch. Helping Hans is a streamer for various things, including Company of Heroes 2, and I'm sure he'll be streaming Dawn of War 3 when it's launched. Tenchi is a StarCraft and mainly a CSGO caster. So if you follow him on Twitter, you can keep up with his streams. Stormless, I don't even know what you stream anymore. Are you still streaming Co?
Yes.
You are. Okay, cool. All right, and of course, ourselves, if you're just watching this new for the first time, we do a lot of random things. Shoutcasting for a bunch of different RTS games, Command & Conquer, Company of Heroes, Dawn of War 2, because it's a great game, and various other things as well. So, yeah, thanks for watching. Hopefully you found this one interesting. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about in future podcasts. I would love to do a single-player podcast. I think that's for me, it's something that I haven't talked about much. I think that'd be interesting. So... yeah, I have plenty of ideas for these podcasts. They are quite fun. So, yeah. See you later.